The emergency alarm echoed through the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. Red lights flashed across the curved walls as hundreds of representatives from different worlds looked up from their morning discussions. The peaceful atmosphere of the space station suddenly felt heavy with worry. Council Speaker Nora stood at the central platform. Her tall, thin frame moved with the grace of someone born on a low-gravity world. She pressed a button on her console, and the main screen came to life. Static filled the air before a weak voice broke through. "This is Colony Leader David from Kepler 442b. We need help. They came from nowhere. Our cities are burning. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help now." The transmission cut to static again. Then another voice came through, younger and more frightened. "Mom, where are you? The sky is red and the buildings are falling down. I can't find you anywhere. Please come back." The child's voice faded into silence. The great hall remained quiet for several long seconds. No one moved. No one spoke. Nora cleared her throat. "Computer, replay the message from the beginning." The same desperate voices filled the hall again. This time, everyone listened more carefully. The Vegan colony on Kepler 442b had been one of the most peaceful settlements in this sector of the galaxy. They grew food for 20 different worlds. They had never asked for military help before. Council Member Blake from the water world of Aquatica raised his webbed hand. "Speaker Nora, what do we know about the attackers?" Nora touched her console again. A new image appeared on the screen. It showed dark ships moving through space like hungry wolves. Their design was rough and ugly, built for destroying rather than exploring. Our deep space sensors picked up this fleet 3 days ago. They appeared from the void between star systems. No identification signals, no response to communication attempts. They went straight to Kepler 442b and began their attack. Council Member Rita, from the forest world of Sylvana, stood up. Her green skin looked pale under the emergency lights. "The Vegans have no military. They are farmers and scientists. They cannot fight ships like these." "What about our peacekeeping forces?" asked Council Member Marcus from the desert world of Sands. Nora shook her head. "Our nearest fleet is 4 sectors away, dealing with the mining disputes near the outer rim. Our second fleet is protecting the trade routes from pirates. Our third fleet is helping with the refugee crisis at the Broken Worlds." "How long would it take them to reach Kepler 442b?" Blake asked. 6 weeks minimum," Nora replied. "The Vegan colony will be gone by then." The hall filled with worried voices. Representatives talked among themselves, but no one had a good answer. The Galactic Council had been built for peace, not war. They were good at solving trade disputes and sharing resources. They were not good at fighting raiders who came from the dark spaces between stars. Council Member Elena from the mountain world of Peaks stood up. She was older than most of the others, and her voice carried the weight of experience. "What about hiring mercenaries?" "The good ones are already working," Nora said. "The bad ones cannot be trusted with civilian lives." The voices grew louder. Some representatives suggested calling for volunteers. Others wanted to negotiate with the raiders. A few thought they should abandon the colony and evacuate whoever they could save. Then a new voice cut through the noise. It was quiet, but clear. "What about the humans?" Everyone turned to look at Council Member Omar from the Garden World of Bloom. He was young for a council member, but he had studied the military history of different species. He knew things that others preferred to forget. "The humans?" Nora repeated. "Omar, you cannot be serious." "Why not?" Omar asked. "They have fast ships. They have trained soldiers. They are used to dangerous situations." Council Member Blake made a sound of disgust. "They are Deathworlders. They come from a planet that tries to kill everything that lives on it. They are too dangerous." "Dangerous to who?" Omar replied. "To raiders who attack peaceful farmers?" "That sounds perfect to me." The hall erupted in argument. Half the representatives thought humans were too violent and unpredictable. The other half thought they were the only ones who could help the Vegan colony in time. Rita stood up again. "I have worked with humans before. They are not monsters. They are people who had to become strong to survive their world. Strong enough to kill," Blake said. Strong enough to protect, Rita replied. There is a difference. Marcus leaned forward in his seat. Even if we wanted to ask them, how would we contact them? Humans do not have a permanent representative on the council. They have an embassy on Station 7, Omar said. It is only 2 hours away by fast ship. Nora looked around the hall. The arguments were getting louder. Time was running out for the people on Kepler 442b. She made a decision that would change everything. Computer, connect me to the human embassy on Station 7. The arguing stopped. Everyone stared at the main screen as it flickered to life. A human face appeared, older with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore a simple uniform with no fancy decorations. This is Ambassador John Reed. How can I help you, Speaker Nora? Nora took a deep breath. Ambassador Reed, we have a situation. The Vegan colony on Kepler 4422b is under attack by unknown raiders. Our peacekeeping forces are too far away to help. We need someone who can respond quickly. Ambassador Reed's expression did not change. What kind of raiders? Organized fleet. Military-grade weapons. They are not interested in negotiation. Civilian casualties? Unknown, but likely high. The colony has no defensive capabilities. Ambassador Reed was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. I will contact our rapid response team. They can be ready to leave in 4 hours. Blake stood, up quickly. Ambassador, we have not agreed to hire human forces. We are still discussing options. Ambassador Reed looked at Blake with calm eyes. Council Member Blake, I understand your concerns. But while you discuss options, people are dying. We do not need a contract or payment. We need coordinates and permission to help. The hall fell silent again. This was not what anyone had expected. Humans were supposed to be expensive mercenaries who fought for profit. They were not supposed to volunteer for dangerous missions without asking for anything in return. Nora felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. Ambassador Reed, what do you need from us? Current intelligence on the raider fleet, communication frequencies for the colony, and a promise that we will not be charged with war crimes for doing what is necessary to protect civilians. The last part sent a chill through the hall. Everyone knew what humans were capable of when they decided to fight. They had heard the stories from the few pirates who had been foolish enough to attack human ships. You have all of that, Nora said. When can your team reach Kepler 442b? Ambassador Reed checked something off screen. 18 hours from now. 18 hours, Marcus said. That is impossible. It takes 3 days to reach that system. Ambassador Reed smiled for the first time. Council Member Marcus, you have never seen a human ship in a hurry. The transmission ended. The hall remained quiet for a long moment. Then the emergency alarm sounded again. Another message was coming from Kepler 442b. This time it was just children's voices, calling for their parents in the darkness. Speaker Nora closed her eyes and hoped the humans would arrive in time. Captain Jake Martinez stood in the command center of the human ship Defiant. The emergency message from the Galactic Council had arrived 30 minutes ago. His crew was already moving with the quick efficiency that made human rapid response teams famous across the galaxy. Jake was not a tall man, but he carried himself like someone who had seen many battles. His dark hair was cut short, and his brown eyes missed nothing. He had spent 15 years in Earth's military before joining the Deep Space Service. He knew how to make hard decisions quickly. Status report, he called out. Lieutenant Lisa Park looked up from her medical station. She was checking supplies and preparing for casualties. Lisa had gentle features and a soft voice, but Jake knew she could work miracles with limited medical supplies. She had trained in the worst hospitals on Earth before joining the space service. Medical bay is ready, Captain. I have treatment protocols for vegan physiology loaded into the computer. Emergency supplies are packed for planet-side operations. Sergeant Tom Rodriguez called out from the engineering section. His hands moved, over control panels like a musician playing an instrument. Tom could fix anything with whatever materials were available. He had grown up in the slums of old Mexico City, where people learn to make miracles from scrap metal and hope. Engines are running at maximum efficiency, Captain. Jump drive is charged and ready. I have also prepared emergency repair kits for damaged infrastructure. Lieutenant Alex Thompson stood at the tactical station. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her blue eyes studied the information on her screens. Alex had been a strategic planner for Earth's special operations before joining the crew. She could see patterns that others missed and find weaknesses in any defense. Captain, I have analyzed the intelligence data from the Council. The Raider fleet consists of 12 ships. They are using old but effective kinetic weapons. No energy shields detected. They prefer hit-and-run tactics against civilian targets. Jake nodded. What about their formation? Loose and undisciplined. They rely on overwhelming firepower rather than coordinated attacks. Their ships are heavily armored but not very fast. Good. That gives us options. Jake turned to the communication officer. Any new messages from the colony? Corporal Mike. Stevens shook his head. His young face looked worried. Nothing for the past 2 hours, Captain. Either they cannot transmit, or there is no one left to send messages. The command center fell quiet for a moment. Everyone understood what that silence might mean. Jake activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We have received a humanitarian mission request from the Galactic Council. The Vegan colony on Kepler 442b is under attack by raiders. Civilian casualties are expected to be high. He paused, looking around at his crew. These 40 men and women had volunteered for this kind of work. They knew the risks. We are the only ship close enough to help. The Council's peacekeeping forces are weeks away. This means we go in alone against superior numbers. Some of you might be thinking this is suicide. Tom chuckled from his station. Captain, we are humans. We do impossible things before breakfast. The crew laughed and Jake smiled. This was why he loved working with humans. They did not back down from impossible odds. They found a way to win anyway. Our mission is simple, Jake continued. Eliminate the raider threat and protect as many civilians as possible. We launch in 15 minutes. All department heads, prepare your teams. The crew scattered to their duties. Jake remained on the command deck studying the tactical displays. 12 raider ships against 1 human vessel. The math looked terrible, but Jake had learned long ago that math did not account for human determination. Lisa approached him with a medical tablet in her hands. Captain, I have been studying vegan biology. They are herbivores with very delicate bone structure. They do not heal from injuries as quickly as humans do. What does that mean for our mission? It means we need to end this fight fast. The longer it goes on, the more civilians will die from injuries that would not kill a human. Jake nodded. Understood. Alex, what is our best approach? Alex looked up from her tactical computer. The raiders are holding position in high orbit. They are using the planet's gravity well to limit escape routes. Standard military doctrine would be to engage them in space first, then proceed to ground operations. But we are not standard military, Jake said. No, we are not. Alex smiled. I recommend we skip the space battle entirely. Use our speed advantage to get past their fleet and go straight to the surface. Force them to come to us on our terms. Tom called out from engineering. Captain, our jump drive can put us directly into the planet's atmosphere. The raiders will not expect that kind of entry. Can the ship handle atmospheric entry at jump speeds? For about 30 seconds before we burn up, but 30 seconds is enough to get us where we need to be. Jake made his decision. Do it. Plot a course that takes us directly to the largest population center. We need to get between the raiders and the civilians. Mike looked up from his communication station. Captain, I am picking up a weak signal from the planet. Someone is still alive down there. Put it through. The speakers crackled with static. Then a voice came through, weak but determined. This is Colony Leader David. If anyone can hear this, we are hiding in the underground shelters beneath the Crystal City. The raiders have taken control of the surface. They are using some kind of drilling equipment to break through our defenses. Jake grabbed the microphone. Colony Leader David, this is Captain Martinez of the human ship Defiant. We are 18 hours out. Can you hold that long? The pause seemed to last forever. Then David's voice came back, filled with surprise and hope. Did you say human ship? Captain, we have 40,000 civilians in these shelters. Half of them are children. We will get them out, I promise you that. Can you maintain communication? We will try. Captain, the raiders are not just attacking randomly. They are looking for something specific. They keep asking about our agricultural research data. Alex looked up from her station. Captain, that makes sense. Vegan agricultural technology could be worth billions on the black market. Jake felt anger building in his chest. These raiders were not just killers, they were thieves who would murder 40,000 innocent people for profit. David, do not give them anything. We are coming. The transmission ended. Jake looked around, at his crew. Their faces showed the same anger he felt. Humans had a particular hatred for those who preyed on the innocent. Final systems check, Jake ordered. Jump in 10 minutes. Lisa packed the last of her medical supplies. Tom ran final diagnostics on the engines. Alex loaded targeting data into the weapons systems. Mike prepared emergency communication equipment. The Defiant was not the largest ship in space. It was not the most heavily armed. But it carried something that the raiders had never faced before, humans who had decided to protect someone. Jake strapped himself into the captain's chair. All stations report ready. Medical ready. Engineering ready. Tactical ready. Communications ready. Jake looked at the star field on the main screen. Somewhere out there, 40,000 people were hiding in the dark, waiting for help that might never come. Jump drive engaged. Destination, Kepler 442b. The stars stretched into lines of light and the Defiant disappeared into the void. The Defiant dropped out of jump space like a falling star. Captain Jake Martinez gripped his chair as the ship shuddered under the stress of atmospheric entry at impossible speeds. Red warning lights flashed across the command center. Hull temperature. Critical, Tom called out from engineering. His hands flew over the controls as he rerouted power to the heat shields. We have maybe 20 seconds before we start losing hull plating. That's 19 seconds more than we need, Jake replied. He studied the tactical display as the planet's surface rushed toward them. The crystal city of the Vegans sparkled, below like a broken jewel. Dark smoke rose from several districts where the raiders had been working. Alex looked up from her station. Captain, I have 12 raider ships in high orbit. They are moving to intercept, but they cannot match our descent speed. Good. That gives us the element of surprise. What about ground forces? Scanning now. Alex's fingers danced over her controls. I count approximately 200 raiders on the surface. They have established fortified positions around the main population centers. They are using the civilians as human shields. Jake felt his jaw tighten. These raiders were not just thieves. They were cowards who hid behind innocent people. Tom, can you get us down in one piece? Define one piece, Tom replied. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fought to keep the ship stable. We are going to hit hard, but we will be in one piece when we do. The Defiant screamed through the atmosphere like a meteor. Below them, raider ships scrambled to respond to this unexpected arrival. They had been preparing for a slow siege, not a direct assault from space. Brace for impact, Jake ordered. The ship hit the ground with tremendous force. The impact threw everyone forward in their seats despite the safety restraints. Sparks flew from damaged systems and the lights flickered before emergency power kicked in. Damage report, Jake called out. Lisa checked her medical station. Medical bay is intact. No injuries to the crew. Tom wiped blood from a cut on his forehead. Main engines are offline, but that was expected. Life support is functional. Weapon systems are operational. Alex studied her tactical displays. Captain, we landed right where we wanted. The main civilian shelter is 200 meters to our east. The raiders are converging on our position from 3 directions. Mike's communication equipment crackled to life. Captain, I have Colony Leader David on the line. Put him through. David's voice filled the command center, filled with disbelief and hope. Captain Martinez, we saw your ship land. Are you insane? You just dropped out of the sky like a comet. David, we need you to keep your people in the shelters. We are going to clear the surface of raiders, but it might get loud. Captain, there are 200 of them. How many soldiers do you have? Jake looked around at his crew of 40. By any reasonable military standard, they were outnumbered 5-1. But Jake had learned long ago that humans did not fight by reasonable standards. Enough, he replied. The first raider attack came 15 minutes later. Jake watched through the ship's external cameras as rough-looking fighters approached the Defiant from multiple directions. They moved with confidence, probably thinking that 40 humans would surrender rather than fight hopeless odds. They were about to learn why humans were called Deathworlders. Alex, what are our options? Alex had been studying the raider positions while the crew prepared for battle. They are using standard suppression tactics. Pin us down with heavy weapons, then move in close for the kill. It works well against most species, but not against humans. No, not against humans. Alex smiled grimly. Captain, I recommend we split into 4 teams. Tom's engineering team can secure the civilian shelters. Lisa's medical team can set up a field hospital. My tactical team can eliminate the raider strongholds. Your command team can coordinate everything. Jake nodded. Do it. The rear door of the Defiant opened, and 40 humans emerged into the alien afternoon. The air smelled of smoke and fear, but Jake's crew moved with calm purpose. They had trained for situations like this on Earth, where everything tried to kill you and you learned to kill it first. Tom led his 10-person engineering team toward the shelter entrances. They carried heavy equipment and enough firepower to punch through whatever stood in their way. Tom had grown up in places where survival meant being tougher than your environment. An alien world full of raiders was just another Tuesday for him. Lisa's medical team moved toward the areas where civilian casualties were likely. She carried medical supplies that could treat injuries from a dozen different species. Lisa had learned to save lives under the worst possible conditions. Saving alien civilians while raiders shot at her was just another day at the office. Alex's tactical team disappeared into the ruins of the Crystal City like ghosts. They carried weapons designed for fighting in Earth's harshest environments. Alex had planned operations in places where the weather could kill you faster than the enemy. Fighting raiders on a garden world was almost relaxing by comparison. Jake stayed with the command team near the Defiant, coordinating the other teams and watching for opportunities. His people were outnumbered, but they had advantages that the raiders did not understand. The first raider squad approached Tom's position near the shelter entrance. They expected to find frightened humans hiding behind barricades. Instead, they found Tom calmly setting up defensive positions while his team welded the shelter doors shut from the outside. Hey, Tom called out to the raiders in accented English. You guys picked the wrong planet to mess with. The raiders opened fire with automatic weapons. The bullets sparked off the crystal walls around Tom's position, but he did not seem worried. He finished his work on the door, then picked up his rifle. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of why humans had become the apex predators on a world that constantly tried to kill them. Tom's team moved through the raider positions like a pack of wolves, using cover and coordination tactics that the raiders had never seen before. Within minutes, the first raider squad was eliminated. Tom's voice crackled over the radio. Shelter. Entrance secured. Civilians are safe. Similar reports came in from across the battlefield. Lisa's team had reached the wounded civilians and was providing medical aid while fighting off raider attacks. Alex's team had eliminated 3 raider strongholds and was moving on the 4th. The raiders began to realize they were not fighting ordinary soldiers. These humans moved like they belonged in combat zones. They took risks that should have gotten them killed, but somehow always came out ahead. Captain Jake watched his tactical display as red enemy markers disappeared one by one. His 40 humans were systematically dismantling a force of 200 raiders, and they were doing it without losing a single person. In orbit above, the 12 raider ships finally moved to provide ground support for their comrades. They began bombing runs on the human positions, but Jake had expected this. Tom, are those defensive systems online yet? Tom's voice came back cheerful despite the explosions around him. Just finished the installation, Captain. The Vegans are about to learn why human military technology comes with a warranty. The Crystal City suddenly bristled with defensive weapons that had not been there an hour ago. Tom's engineering team had worked miracles with vegan technology and human innovation. The Raider ships found themselves facing surface-to-air missiles that could think for themselves and laser arrays that never missed their targets. 2 Raider ships were destroyed in the first exchange. The others retreated to high orbit, suddenly much less confident about their chances. Jake allowed himself a small smile. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. The Raiders had come expecting easy prey. Instead, they had found humans who were very good at their job. His job was protecting people who could not protect themselves, and Jake was very good at his job. The Crystal City had become a battlefield, but not the kind the Raiders expected. Captain Jake Martinez moved through the shattered streets with his command team, coordinating the human response to what should have been an impossible situation. The Raiders had taken hostages in the Central District. They held nearly 500 vegan civilians in the main community center, a beautiful building made of living crystal that grew from the ground like a tree. The Raiders thought this would protect them from the humans who had already destroyed half their forces. They were wrong. Jake crouched behind a fallen crystal pillar and studied the building through his tactical scope. Alex knelt beside him, her blonde hair covered with dust from the fighting. She had been analyzing the Raider positions for 20 minutes. Captain, they have snipers on the upper levels and heavy weapons at all the entrances. They are using the hostages as human shields, keeping them in the center of the building where we cannot reach them without going through the Raiders first. Jake nodded. What about Tom's progress on the shelters? Alex checked her communication device. All civilian shelters are secure. Tom's team eliminated the last Raider squad near the east entrance 15 minutes ago. He is now working on getting power restored to the medical facilities. And Lisa? She has set up a field hospital in the old market square. She is treating both human and vegan wounded. The vegans are amazed that she can adapt our medical techniques to their biology so quickly. Jake heard a sound behind him and turned to see a young vegan approaching their position. The alien moved carefully, his green skin pale with fear, but his large eyes filled with determination. He was smaller than a human child, but carried himself with dignity. Captain Martinez? The vegan asked in accented English. I am Teacher Ben. I escaped from the community center when the Raiders first attacked. Jake helped the alien crouch down beside them. Ben, what can you tell us about the building layout? Ben pulled out a small device that projected a 3-dimensional map of the community center. The building has 5 levels. The Raiders are keeping the hostages on the 3rd level in the main assembly hall. They have guards on every stairwell and in every corridor. Alex studied the map carefully. What about ventilation systems? Service tunnels? The building was grown, not built, Ben explained. The crystal walls are solid. There are no hidden passages or service areas. The only way in is through the main entrances. Jake felt his jaw tighten. This was exactly the kind of situation that killed hostages. Any direct assault would result in civilian casualties. But waiting gave the Raiders time to escape or hurt their prisoners. Ben, how well do you know the other vegans in there? Very well. Many are my students and their families. They are scared, but they will follow instructions if they know the instructions come from someone trying to help them. Jake made a decision that would have horrified most military commanders. He was going to trust civilians to help with their own rescue. Alex, can you get a communication signal into that building? Alex checked her equipment. The Raiders are jamming most frequencies, but I can probably punch through on an emergency channel. Do it. Alex set up her portable communication array while Jake planned what he was about to attempt. Most species in the galaxy preferred complex strategies that minimized risk. Humans preferred simple plans that maximized results. The plan Jake had in mind was very simple and very dangerous. Ben, I need you to talk to your people inside that building. Tell them that in exactly 10 minutes they need to get as low to the floor as possible and stay there until I tell them it is safe. Ben's large eyes grew even larger. Captain, what are you planning to do? Something that will either save everyone or get us all killed. Alex looked up from her communication device. Captain, I have a signal into the building. Ben can talk to his people. Ben took the microphone with shaking hands. He spoke in his own language, his voice calm despite the danger. Jake could not understand the words, but he could hear the hope in Ben's voice as he explained that help had arrived. When Ben finished, Jake took the microphone. He switched to the radar frequency that Alex had identified. This is Captain Martinez, of the human ship Defiant. I am speaking to the raiders in the community center. A rough voice answered immediately. Human, you are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now and we might let you live. Jake almost laughed. These raiders still did not understand what they were fighting. I have a counteroffer. Release the hostages and surrender. You have 60 seconds to decide. You are insane. We have 500 civilians. You attack us, they die. 50 seconds. The raider voice became angry. You cannot threaten us. We hold all the advantages here. Jake looked at Alex, who nodded. Her tactical team was in position. Tom's engineers had finished their work. Lisa's medical team was ready for casualties. Everything was ready. 40 seconds. Human, you are bluffing. No species in the galaxy would risk civilian lives for a military objective. Jake smiled grimly. This was the raiders' mistake. They thought humans were like other species. They thought humans would follow the same rules and make the same calculations. They had never met humans who had decided to protect someone. 30 seconds. This is madness. You will get everyone killed. 20 seconds. Jake heard panic creeping into the raider's voice. Good. Scared enemies made mistakes. 10 seconds. Wait, we want to negotiate. 5 seconds. Stop, we surrender. Too late. Jake gave the signal. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for decades. Alex's tactical team did not assault the building. Instead, they created a distraction that drew the raiders' attention to the windows and upper levels. At the same time, Tom's engineering team activated devices they had secretly placed around the building's foundation. The devices did not explode. Instead, they sent harmonic vibrations through the crystal structure that caused very specific resonance patterns. The crystal walls began to sing. The sound was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It resonated at exactly the frequency that caused vegan crystals to become temporarily transparent. The solid walls turned into clear windows that showed everything inside the building. The raiders found themselves exposed with nowhere to hide. They could see the humans outside, and the humans could see them. Worse, they could see that the humans had weapons aimed at every raider position with perfect accuracy. The psychological impact was devastating. The raiders had gone from feeling safe behind solid walls to feeling completely exposed in seconds. Many of them panicked and abandoned their positions. Jake's voice echoed through the building via speakers that Tom had built into the harmonic devices. All vegan civilians, stay on the floor. Do not move until I give the all clear. All raiders, drop your weapons and surrender. You have nowhere to hide. Some raiders tried to fight. Alex's team eliminated them with precise shots that avoided civilian casualties. Other raiders tried to run. Tom's team was waiting for them at every exit. Within minutes, the community center was secure. The hostages were safe. The raiders were either dead or captured. Jake walked into the building through the main entrance. The crystal walls had returned to their normal solid state, but the battle was over. Vegan civilians were standing up and hugging each other. Some were crying with relief. Teacher Ben approached Jake with tears in his large eyes. Captain, how did you know the crystals would respond to harmonic frequencies? Jake looked at Tom, who was checking on the rescued civilians. Tom spent 2 hours studying your building materials while we were planning the assault. He figured out that vegan crystal technology could be used in ways you never considered. But the risk, if your plan had failed, everyone would have died. Jake helped an elderly vegan to his feet. Ben, humans do not like to fail when people are counting on us. The last of the raider resistance crumbled an hour later. The remaining ships in orbit fled into hyperspace rather than face the defensive systems that Tom had built around the city. The battle for Kepler 4 and 42b was over. Jake stood in the main square, watching Lisa treat wounded civilians with the help of vegan medical personnel. The aliens were amazed at how quickly she had learned their biology and adapted human medical techniques to save their people. 3 days had passed since the last raider ship fled into hyperspace. The crystal city of Kepler 442b was quiet, except for the sounds of repair work and recovery. Captain Jake Martinez walked through the streets that had been a battlefield just days before, watching his crew help the vegan civilians rebuild their lives. The morning sun cast rainbow patterns through the repaired crystal buildings. Children played in the squares where raiders had once held positions. The air smelled of growing things instead of smoke and fear. Jake found Lisa in the main medical center, training vegan doctors in human emergency medicine techniques. She had dark circles under her eyes from working without sleep, but she smiled when she saw him. "How are our patients?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her notes. "All critical cases are stable. The vegans heal differently than humans, but the basic principles are the same. Their doctors are quick learners." A young vegan doctor approached them. Her name was Dr. Mary, and she had been working with Lisa since the battle ended. "Captain Martinez, Dr. Park has taught us procedures that will save lives for generations. We never knew that human medicine could adapt so easily to our biology." Jake nodded. "Dr. Park has a gift for helping people no matter what species they are." Tom appeared in the doorway, covered in crystal dust and looking pleased with himself. "Captain, we just finished installing the new defense grid around the city. If anyone tries to attack this place again, they are going to get a very unpleasant surprise." "What kind of surprise?" Tom grinned. "The kind that turns raider ships into very expensive fireworks. The vegans now have better defenses than most military worlds." Jake walked outside with Tom, leaving Lisa to continue her medical training. They found Alex in the central square, talking with colony leader David and teacher Ben. She was showing them tactical displays on her portable computer. "Captain," Alex called out when she saw him, "David and Ben want to understand how we planned the rescue operation. They are having trouble believing that 40 humans could defeat 200 raiders." David stepped forward. His green skin had regained its healthy color, and his large eyes were bright with curiosity. "Captain Martinez, our military advisors from the Galactic Council always told us that successful military operations require careful planning, superior numbers, and overwhelming firepower. You had none of those advantages." Jake sat down on a crystal bench that had grown from the ground. "David, humans learned long ago that the best plan is often the simplest one. We did not try to outthink the raiders. We just did what we do best." "Which is what?" "Protect people who cannot protect themselves." Ben joined the conversation. The young teacher had become something of a hero among his people for helping with the rescue. "Captain, I have been studying human military history since the battle ended. Your species has a pattern of achieving impossible victories against superior odds. How do you explain this?" Jake thought about the question. How could he explain that humans had spent millions of years learning to survive on a world that constantly tried to kill them? How could he make these peaceful aliens understand that Earth had forged its children in the fires of constant danger? "Ben, humans come from a world where everything is dangerous. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the bacteria. We learned to adapt or die. That made us very good at solving problems quickly." Alex added, "We also learned to work together. On Earth, cooperation is the difference between life and death. That is why human teams are so effective." David looked thoughtful. "Captain, the Galactic Council has asked me to extend an official invitation. They want you and your crew to stay here and help us establish permanent defenses." Jake shook his head. "We appreciate the offer, David, but we cannot stay. There are other colonies that might need help, other distress calls that might come. But who will protect us if the raiders return?" Tom spoke up from where he was checking his defense installations. "David, you do not need us anymore. Your people now have weapons and training. More importantly, you have confidence. The raiders will think twice before attacking a world that defeated them so completely." A communication device on Alex's belt beeped. She checked the message and frowned. "Captain, we have an urgent transmission from the Galactic Council." Jake activated his own communicator. The familiar face of Council Speaker Nora appeared on the small screen. She looked tired but relieved. Captain Martinez, the Council has reviewed the reports from Kepler 442b. We want to thank you for your service. Just doing our job, Speaker Nora. Captain, the Council has been in session for 2 days discussing humanity's role in galactic affairs. We have reached a decision that we hope you will find acceptable. Jake waited. He had learned that politicians always took their time getting to the point. The Council is prepared to offer humanity a formal contract. We want to establish a permanent, rapid response agreement. When colonies are threatened by raiders, pirates, or natural disasters, we will call on human teams to provide assistance. Jake looked at his crew. Lisa had joined them, along with Mike and several other team members. They all had the same expression, interest mixed with caution. What kind of contract are we talking about, Speaker Nora? Full diplomatic recognition for Earth, preferred trading status with all Council worlds, access to galactic medical and scientific databases, and payment for your services, of course. Tom whistled softly. Captain, that is a very generous offer. Nora continued. Captain, the Council has realized something important. We built our civilization on the assumption that all intelligent species are basically peaceful. We created institutions for cooperation and trade, but we did not prepare for those who choose violence over negotiation. And now you have. Yes. The galaxy needs protectors, Captain Martinez. People who are willing to face impossible odds to defend the innocent. The galaxy needs humans. Jake thought about the offer. It would mean regular work for human rapid response teams. It would mean official recognition of humanity's place in galactic civilization. It would mean resources and support for future missions. It would also mean that whenever someone in the galaxy sent out a distress call, humans would be the ones to answer. Speaker Nora, I will need to discuss this with my government. Of course, but Captain, I hope you will recommend acceptance. The galaxy is a dangerous place. It is better to have humans standing guard. The transmission ended. Jake looked around at his crew, then at the Vegan civilians who had gathered to listen. These aliens had gone from fearing humans as dangerous Deathworlders to seeing them as protectors in the span of 3 days. David stepped forward. Captain Martinez, whatever your government decides, please know that the people of Kepler 442b will never forget what you did for us. Jake stood up and shook David's hand. The Vegan's grip was weak by human standards, but his gratitude was strong. David, if you ever need help again, just call. Someone will answer. 2 hours later, the Defiant lifted off from the Crystal City. Jake watched through the main screen as the planet fell away below them. The city sparkled in the sunlight, beautiful and peaceful once again. Mike called out from the communication station. Captain, we have another emergency signal. A mining colony in the Outer Rim is reporting attacks by automated defense systems that have gone rogue. Jake settled into his captain's chair. His crew was already moving to their stations with the smooth efficiency that made human teams legendary. Across the galaxy. Set course for the Outer Rim, Jake ordered. Maximum speed. The Defiant jumped into hyperspace, carrying 40 humans toward their next mission. Somewhere in the galaxy, people were in danger and calling for help. Earth would send its Deathworlders, and they would answer. The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal spires of Velros Prime's capital city. Ambassador Teal stood at the tall windows of the council chamber, watching the daily life of his people unfold below. The Villani moved with their usual grace through the floating walkways, their pale blue skin catching the light as they went about their peaceful routines. Teal's forearms moved quickly across the control panel, checking the latest reports from their deep space sensors. What he saw made his heart sink. The dark fleet was still coming, growing larger with each passing hour. The readings are confirmed, called General Kren from across the chamber. The military leader's voice carried worry that he tried to hide. 1,700 ships, all bearing Corvin markings. They will reach our system in 2 days. The other council members gathered around the central display. The holographic image showed their beautiful world, surrounded by defensive satellites and energy shields. But everyone knew it would not be enough. The Corvin Empire had crushed dozens of worlds with smaller fleets than this. Have we heard anything from the Galactic Council? Asked Counselor Nora, her voice barely above a whisper. Teal shook his head slowly. They sent their regrets. The Council will not interfere in what they call territorial disputes. They suggest we negotiate for the best surrender terms possible. A heavy silence filled the chamber. The Villani had built their civilization on knowledge and peace. For 3,000 years, they had never needed to fight anyone. Their world was rich in rare minerals and energy crystals, making them valuable to those who took by force. But they had always believed that reason and diplomacy could solve any problem. "What about the Zephyrians?" General Kren asked. "They have a strong fleet." "They fear the Corvin too much," Teal replied. "As do the Altarians and the Centauri Union. No one wants to face Warlord Drax's forces." The display shifted to show the approaching Corvin fleet. Their ships were dark and angular, built for one purpose only. The lead vessel was massive, bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. Behind it came wave after wave of smaller ships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city. "Sir," interrupted a young technician from the communication station, "we have a response to our emergency broadcast." Teal turned quickly. "From whom?" "It's strange, sir. The signal is coming from a system called Sol. They identify themselves as humans from a world called Earth." The council members looked at each other with confusion. None of them had heard of these humans or their world. "Are they part of the Galactic Council?" asked Counselor Nora. The technician checked his readings. "No, sir. According to our records, they only made contact with galactic civilization 6 months ago. They're listed as a developing species from a Class 12 world." "Class 12? General Kren's voice rose in surprise. "That's classified as a death world. How did they develop space travel?" Teal moved to the communication station. "What exactly did they say?" "They want to know more about our situation. A Captain Blake is requesting permission to send a small ship to assess our needs." The council members began talking at once. Some argued that unknown aliens could not be trusted. Others pointed out that they had no other options. The Corvin fleet would arrive soon, and their own defenses were failing under constant probe attacks. "What do we know about their military capabilities?" Teal asked. The technician worked at his console for several minutes. "Very little, sir. They have some basic ships, but nothing compared to major galactic powers. Their technology seems primitive. They still use chemical rockets and metal hulls." "Metal hulls?" General Kren laughed despite their situation. "What kind of species? Builds ships out of metal? Don't they understand energy shielding?" "Sir," the technician continued, "there's something else. Our sensors show their home system has several mining operations on dead worlds. And their planet—" He paused, checking his readings again. "Their planet has gravity twice what most species can handle. The atmosphere is 20% toxic gas. The surface is covered with water that would dissolve most organic matter." "And they evolved there naturally?" Counselor Nora asked in amazement. "It appears so. They seem to consider these conditions normal." Teal thought for a long moment. His people were running out of time and options. The Corvin Empire had never shown mercy to anyone who resisted them. If these humans were willing to help, even if they were primitive, it might be their only chance. "Send a reply," he decided. "Tell Captain Blake he has permission to visit our world, but warn him about our environmental conditions." "Sir," General Kren protested, "we don't know anything about these humans. They could be worse than the Corvin." "Could they really be worse than total extinction?" Teal replied. "Besides, they asked to help us. The Corvin never asked for anything." The technician sent the message while the council continued to debate. Outside the windows, the first signs of panic were beginning to show. Citizens had heard rumors of the approaching fleet. Some were loading their belongings onto transport ships, though there was nowhere to run that the Corvin could not follow. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "Captain Blake acknowledges our message. He says his ship will arrive in 18 hours. 18 hours? General Kren checked the distance calculations. That's impossible. No ship can cross that distance so quickly without using quantum tunnels, and we didn't detect any tunnel openings. Teal studied the star charts. The human system was indeed very far away. Either they had technology beyond what their record suggested, or they were already much closer than anyone realized. Perhaps, he said quietly, there's more to these humans than we understand. The next few hours passed slowly. The Villani military worked desperately to strengthen their defenses, knowing it would not be enough. Energy weapons were charged to full power. Shield generators were pushed beyond safe limits, but everyone knew they were just buying time. Reports came in from their outer colonies. 3 mining stations had gone dark. 2 research outposts reported Corvan scout ships in their area. The enemy was already beginning to surround them. Any word from Captain Blake? Teal asked for the 10th time. No, sir, but... The technician paused, studying his instruments. Sir, I'm detecting a ship entering our system. It's moving very fast, but I can't identify the drive signature. Corvan Advanced Scout? No, sir. The hull composition is... It's actually made of metal, just like the record said. And sir, it's heading straight for us at a speed that should tear any ship apart. Teal looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere, out there, a ship full of beings from a death world was racing toward them. He didn't know if they were saviors or just another threat. But they were coming, and they would arrive before the Corvan fleet. All he could do was wait and hope that his desperate gamble would not doom his people even faster than the enemy they already faced. Captain Ryan Blake felt the familiar vibration of his ship as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The bridge of the UES Defiant was small compared to the massive vessels other species used, but every surface was covered with displays and controls. His crew of 12 moved with practiced efficiency at their stations. We're entering the Velros system now, Captain, reported Lieutenant Davis from the navigation console. The planet matches our star charts exactly. Blake studied the main screen as their destination came into view. Velros Prime was a beautiful world of blue oceans and green continents, with 3 small moons orbiting around it. Cities glowed softly on the night side, connected by streams of light that must be their transportation networks. Looks peaceful. Enough, commented Sergeant Martinez, the team's military advisor. Hard to believe this is what other species call a death world. Sir, called Communications Officer Park, we're receiving a landing beacon from the surface. They're directing us to their capital city. Blake nodded. Take us down, Davis, nice and slow. Let's not scare our new friends. The Defiant descended through the atmosphere with barely a tremor. Blake had to admit the Villani had excellent technology. Their traffic control system was guiding his ship with incredible precision, better than anything Earth had developed. Azing. They approached the landing platform. Blake got his first look at Villani architecture. The buildings were tall and graceful, made of some kind of crystal that seemed to glow from within. Gardens and parks were everywhere, with plants that looked almost familiar but moved in ways that Earth plants never did. Gravity is reading as 0.8 Earth normal, reported Davis. Atmosphere is breathable but has higher oxygen content than we're used to. Temperature is a comfortable 22 degrees. Death World? Martinez laughed. This place is like a vacation resort, compared to Earth. The ship settled onto the landing pad with a soft thud. Through the windows, Blake could see a small group of aliens waiting for them. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Each had 4 arms and moved with flowing grace. Remember, Blake told his team as they prepared to disembark. We're here to help, but we need to understand what we're getting into first. Stay alert, but friendly. The airlock opened with a hiss and Blake stepped onto alien soil for the first time in his career. The air smelled of flowers and something else he couldn't identify. The gravity felt strange after months in space, but not unpleasant. The lead Villani approached them with a gesture that seemed welcoming. When he spoke, his voice was musical and calm. Welcome to Velros Prime. I am Ambassador Teal of the Villani Council. We are grateful that you answered our call for help. Blake stepped forward and offered what he hoped was a friendly human gesture. Captain Ryan Blake of the United Earthship Defiant. We came as soon as we received your message. Teal's large eyes studied the humans with obvious curiosity. Forgive me, Captain Blake, but you are not what we expected. Our records suggest that beings from Class 12 worlds are usually much larger and more aggressive in appearance. Class 12? Blake asked. Is that how you classify Earth? Yes. High gravity, toxic atmosphere, dangerous weather patterns, and hostile native life forms. Most species cannot survive on such worlds without extensive life support. Blake exchanged glances with his team. Martinez was trying not to smile. Ambassador Teal, I think there might be some confusion in your classification system. Earth isn't that dangerous to us. We evolved there. Before Teal could respond, another Villani approached. This one wore what looked like military markings and moved with more urgency. Captain Blake, I am General Kren, military coordinator for our defense forces. I must ask directly, can your people actually help us against the Corvan Empire? Blake studied the alien general. Despite the polite words, he could hear desperation underneath. General, before I can answer that, I need to understand exactly what you're facing. Can you show us your current situation? The Villani led them into the nearest building, which turned out to be some kind of command center. The walls were covered, with displays showing space around their planet. Red dots marked the approaching enemy fleet, still more than a day away but growing closer. 1,700 ships, General Kren explained. The largest invasion force the Corvan have ever assembled. They've been conquering worlds across this sector for 50 years. Blake studied the tactical display. The numbers were overwhelming, but something about the enemy formation bothered him. They're not using any advanced tactics, just flying straight at you in a large group. It has always worked for them before, Teal said sadly. Most civilized species surrender rather than face such numbers. What about your own defenses? Asked Sergeant Martinez. General Kren activated another display. We have orbital shield platforms and energy weapon satellites. Our cities have defensive barriers, but we estimate our systems will hold for perhaps 6 hours once the attack begins. Blake walked around the tactical display, studying it from different angles. His military training was telling him things that the peaceful Villani had probably never considered. General, your defenses are impressive, but they're all designed to stop energy weapons. What about kinetic attacks? Kinetic attacks. General, Kren looked confused. You mean physical projectiles? No civilized species uses such primitive weapons. Martinez coughed to cover a laugh. Blake shot him a warning look before turning back to the aliens. Ambassador Teal, I need to contact my superiors on Earth. This situation is bigger than my small ship can handle, but I think we might be able to help you in ways you haven't considered. You would call for reinforcements? Teal's voice carried a mixture of hope and disbelief. Captain, no offense intended, but our records show your species has only basic space technology. How could you stand against the Corvan Empire? Blake smiled grimly. Ambassador, I think your records might be incomplete. Lieutenant Davis, establish a quantum link with Earth Command. Priority Alpha. While his communications officer worked, Blake continued studying the Villani defenses. Everything was designed with the assumption that warfare was conducted at long range with energy weapons. The idea of ships closing to point-blank range and using physical weapons seemed to have never occurred to anyone. Sir, Davis reported, we have Admiral Ross on the line from Earth Command. The main display flickered and showed the face of a stern woman in her 50s. Admiral Ross had been Blake's mentor for years, and he could see her quickly analyzing the situation from his brief report. Captain Blake, you're requesting permission to engage a hostile fleet of over 1,000 ships? Yes, Admiral. The Villani are peaceful people facing extinction. Their technology is advanced, but they have no real military doctrine. And Admiral... Blake paused. The enemy tactics are extremely basic. They're used to fighting civilizations that surrender after a show of force. Admiral Ross was quiet for several long moments. Blake could practically see her weighing the political and military implications. Captain, maintain your position and continue gathering intelligence. I'm calling an emergency session of the Defense Council. If we do this, we do it right. Irodam. Transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Ambassador Teal and General Kren stared at the humans with expressions Blake couldn't read. Captain, Teal said slowly. Your admiral spoke as if your people might actually engage the Corvan fleet directly. Is that possible? Blake looked at the tactical display again, his mind already working on solutions the Vallani had never imagined. Ambassador, let me ask you something. In all your records of galactic warfare, has any species ever rammed an enemy ship? The aliens looked horrified at the suggestion. The space around Velros Prime suddenly filled with new contacts on the Vallani sensor screens. Admiral Ross had arrived with the Third Fleet, and the sight took everyone's breath away. 12 heavy cruisers dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their dark metal hulls gleaming under the system's sun. Behind them came 30 destroyers, smaller but equally menacing. And at the center of the formation was the flagship Dreadnought Retribution, a massive ship that dwarfed even the largest Vallani vessels. Ambassador Teal stood in the command center, watching the displays with amazement and growing concern. These human ships looked nothing like the graceful vessels used by other galactic civilizations. They were built like fortresses that could fly, covered in armor plating and weapon ports. By the stars, whispered General Kren. How many weapons do these ships carry? Captain Blake smiled at the alien's reaction. The Retribution alone has more firepower than your entire orbital defense grid, but it's built to take damage too. Those armor plates can stop almost anything. Why do they need so much armor? Asked Teal. Most species rely on shields and speed to avoid damage. Because, Blake explained, human military doctrine assumes you're going to get hit. The question is whether you can keep fighting after that happens. The fleet took up positions around Velros Prime with military precision. Each ship knew exactly where to go and what role to play. Within hours, they had established a defensive perimeter that would force any attacker to come through a wall of human firepower. Admiral Ross transported down to the planet's surface to meet with the Vallani leadership. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see everything. When she walked into the command center, she carried herself like someone who had fought many battles and won them all. Ambassador Teal, she said with a respectful nod. I'm Admiral Sarah Ross, commander of the Third Fleet. Captain Blake has briefed me on your situation. Teal returned the gesture as best he could. Admiral Ross, we are grateful for your assistance, but I must ask, are you certain your fleet can stand against the Corvan Empire? They have overwhelming numbers. Admiral Ross studied the tactical displays for several minutes before responding. Ambassador, in human military history, numbers don't always determine the outcome of a battle. Sometimes it's about tactics, training, and willingness to do whatever it takes to win. She turned to General Kren. I need to understand your enemy. Tell me about Corvan battle tactics. General Kren activated the display showing previous Corvan attacks. They approach in a large formation and demand surrender. If refused, they open fire with energy weapons from maximum range. Most civilizations surrender at this point to avoid total destruction. And if the target doesn't surrender, they close to medium range and continue bombardment until all resistance is eliminated. They prefer to keep their ships undamaged. Admiral Ross nodded thoughtfully. They've never faced an enemy that fights back effectively, have they? They're used to quick surrenders or one-sided massacres. That is correct, Teal confirmed. No species has ever successfully resisted a full Corvan invasion force. Well, the Admiral said with a grim smile, there's a first time for everything. Over the next several hours, the human fleet prepared for battle in ways that amazed the Vallani. Ships moved into overlapping fields of fire. Supply vessels distributed ammunition and spare parts. Fighter squadrons ran practice attacks against imaginary targets. Lieutenant Commander Kate Morgan led the fighter pilots in their preparations. Her squadron of 24 fighters looked tiny compared to the massive capital ships, but they moved with deadly precision. The Vallani watched, in fascination as the humans practiced maneuvers that no other species used. Why do your fighters fly so close together? Asked a Vallani technician. Doesn't that make them easier targets? Morgan checked her flight suit one more time before climbing into her cockpit. It's called mutual support. We watch each other's backs and coordinate our attacks. A lone fighter is vulnerable, but a coordinated squadron is deadly. Down on the planet's surface, Commander Jack Torres worked with Villani engineers to prepare ground defenses. The peaceful aliens had never considered that an enemy might actually land troops on their world, but Torres insisted on being ready. "We need overlapping fields of fire here," he explained, marking positions on a holographic map, "and fallback positions every 2 kilometers. If they get past the first line, we make them pay for every meter." The Villani engineers struggled to understand concepts like interlocking fire zones and defensive depth. Their society had never needed such things, but they worked hard to implement Torres's suggestions, using their advanced fabrication technology to build weapons and fortifications in record time. "Commander Torres," asked Engineer Vale, "why do humans prepare for ground combat when the battle will be in space?" Torres looked up from the defensive plans. "Because you always plan for the worst case. If some enemy ships get through, if they try to land troops, we'll be ready for them too." Meanwhile, in space, the Corvin fleet continued its approach. Warlord Drac commanded from his flagship, a massive vessel that served as a mobile fortress. He had conquered 18 worlds with this fleet and expected Velros Prime to surrender like all the others. "Report," he demanded from his bridge crew. "The Villani have been joined by ships from an unknown species," reported his intelligence officer. 43 vessels total, but their technology appears primitive. Metal hulls, chemical propulsion, kinetic weapons. Drac laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. "Primitives with metal ships? This will be easier than expected. Probably mercenaries hired by the Villani with their last resources. Sir, shall we demand their surrender as usual?" "No," Drac decided. "Let's see what these metal ships can do. It might be amusing." Back on Velros Prime, final preparations were underway. Human and Villani personnel worked side by side, sharing technology and tactics. The aliens provided advanced sensors and energy shields, while the humans contributed weapons designs and battle experience. "Admiral," reported Captain Blake, "all ships report ready for action. Fighter squadrons are armed and ready. Ground forces are in position." Admiral Ross stood in the command center, surrounded by displays showing the approaching enemy fleet. In 6 hours, the largest space battle in this sector's history would begin. "Admiral," Ambassador Teal approached hesitantly, "I must ask one final time. Are you certain about this course of action? The Corvin fleet is massive." Ross looked at the alien diplomat with steady eyes. "Ambassador, my species has a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. The Corvin Empire is about to learn what happens when they threaten someone under human protection." She turned to her communications officer. "Signal all ships, battle stations. Today we show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do." Throughout the fleet, klaxons sounded and crew members raced to their positions. Weapon systems powered up, shields came online, and fighter pilots strapped themselves into their cockpits. The Corvin Empire had never faced anything like what was coming for them. The Corvin fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Velros system like a dark storm cloud. 1,700 ships of war spread across space in a formation designed to intimidate. At their head flew Warlord Drac's flagship, the Devastator, a massive vessel bristling with planet-killing weapons. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Ross watched the enemy fleet approach with calm eyes. Around her, the command crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. The main screen showed the Corvin formation, red dots moving steadily toward the blue dot that represented Velros Prime. "They're maintaining their standard approach pattern," reported Captain Blake from his position at the tactical station. "No attempt at deception or advanced maneuvers." "Range?" asked the Admiral. 2 million kilometers in closing. They'll be in weapons range in 30 minutes. Admiral Ross nodded and activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Ross. The enemy is exactly what we expected. Large, arrogant, and predictable. Remember your training and trust your shipmates. Today, we show the galaxy what humans can do." Across the Third Fleet, crew members made final preparations. Weapons were loaded, shields were powered up, and damage control teams stood ready. In the fighter bays, Lieutenant Commander Morgan and her pilots ran through their final checks. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Phoenix Leader," Morgan called over. The radio. Remember, we hit fast and hard. Don't try to dogfight, make your attack run and get out. Copy that, leader, came the responses from her 23 pilots. We're ready to dance. The Corvin fleet continued its advance, maintaining the same formation they had used to conquer 18 worlds. Warlord Drac stood on his command bridge, confident in his overwhelming numbers. The primitives are still here, reported his tactical officer. Their ships are holding position around the planet. How quaint, Drac replied. They actually think they can fight us. Open a channel. The communication screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Ross on the bridge of the Retribution. Drac studied the human female with amusement. She looked so small and fragile compared to his own massive frame. I am Warlord Drac of the Corvin Empire, he announced. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system or be destroyed along with the Villani. Admiral Ross looked back at him with steady eyes. This is Admiral Sarah Ross of the United Earth Fleet. I have a counter-offer. Turn your ships around and leave this system, or we'll send them back as scrap metal. Drac's laugh echoed across the communication link. You amuse me, little human. Let me show you what happens to those who defy the Corvin Empire. The transmission ended, and Drac turned to his weapons officer. Target their flagship. Full power. The Devastator's main guns charged up, energy crackling between the weapon arrays. The massive beam lanced out across space, striking the Retribution's forward shields in a blaze of light. The human ship shuddered under the impact but held its position. Admiral Ross felt the deck vibrate beneath her feet as the shields absorbed the enemy fire. Damage report. Forward shields down to 60%, reported the tactical officer. Hull integrity intact. Their turn, Ross said calmly. All weapons target the enemy flagship. Fire. The Retribution's guns opened up with a sound like thunder. Unlike the focused energy beams most species used, the human weapons fired solid projectiles at incredible speed. Railgun rounds and nuclear-tipped missiles streaked across space toward the Corvin flagship. The first impacts caught Drac completely, by surprise. He had expected return fire with energy weapons, not kinetic projectiles that punched through his shields like they weren't there. Explosions rippled across the Devastator's hull as the human weapons found their mark. Impossible, Drac shouted over the alarms. How are they penetrating our shields? Unknown, sir, replied his tactical officer. Their weapons appear to be physical projectiles moving at extremely high velocity. The rest of the human fleet opened fire at the same moment, and space filled with deadly metal. The Corvin ships, designed to fight energy-based battles, found their shields useless against the human kinetic weapons. Ship after ship took devastating hits as railgun rounds tore through their hulls. All ships advanced to close range. Admiral Ross ordered. Let's show them how humans fight. The Third Fleet surged forward, accelerating directly toward the enemy. Formation. The Corvin commanders watched in disbelief as the human ships closed the distance at maximum speed, taking damage but refusing to retreat. They're mad, whispered one Corvin captain. No one charges directly into superior numbers. But the humans did exactly that. The heavy cruisers led the charge, their thick armor absorbing enemy fire, while their weapons continued to pour destruction into the Corvin ranks. The destroyers followed, smaller and faster, darting between enemy ships to attack from unexpected angles. Lieutenant Commander Morgan's fighters launched from their carriers in perfect formation. The small craft accelerated away from the capital, ships heading straight for the enemy fleet's center. Phoenix Squadron, follow my lead, Morgan called over the radio. We're going after their command ship. The human fighters dove into the massive Corvin formation like hawks attacking a flock of Kesa. Their tactics were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of the long-range energy duels that most species preferred, the humans closed to point-blank range and used rapid-fire weapons to devastating effect. Corvin fighters tried to intercept them, but the aliens had never faced such aggressive tactics. The human pilots flew formations that required split-second timing and absolute trust in their wingmates. They covered each other's attacks and shared targeting data in real time. This is Phoenix 3, called one of Morgan's pilots. I've got 2 bandits on my tail. Rolling in to assist, replied Phoenix 7. Break left in 3, 2, 1, break. The coordinated maneuver sent the pursuing Corvan fighters directly into Phoenix 7's firing line. Both enemy craft exploded in balls of fire. On the ground, Commander Torres watched the space battle through the command center's displays. His defensive positions were ready, but the real fight was happening in orbit. "Sir," reported one of his sergeants, "enemy landing craft are breaking off from the main fleet. Looks like they're trying to get troops to the surface." Torres smiled grimly. "Let them come. We're ready." The Corvan troop transports descended through the atmosphere, expecting to face minimal resistance from the peaceful Velani. Instead, they found landing zones turned into killing fields. Human-designed artillery opened fire, guided by advanced Velani sensors. Anti-aircraft missiles streaked up from hidden positions. Most of the landing craft never made it to the ground. Those that did found themselves under immediate attack from well-prepared defensive positions. The Corvan ground troops, used to fighting enemies who surrendered quickly, faced humans who had turned warfare into a science. Back in space, the battle was reaching its climax. The Corvan fleet, despite its numerical advantage, was being systematically destroyed by human tactics they had never encountered. Ships designed for long-range energy combat found themselves in close-quarters battles where armor and firepower mattered more than shields and speed. Warlord Drac stared at his tactical display in growing horror. Over 300 of his ships had been destroyed or disabled, while the human fleet continued to fight with deadly efficiency. His flagship was taking heavy damage, systems failing throughout the ship. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a message." From the human admiral, Admiral Ross appeared on the screen again, her ship's bridge showing obvious battle damage but her crew still fighting effectively. "Warlord Drac," she said calmly, "I'm giving you one chance to surrender. Order your remaining ships to stand down, or we'll finish what you started." Drac looked around his damaged bridge, then at the tactical display showing his fleet being torn apart by the relentless human assault. Warlord Drac stared at the tactical display on his damaged bridge. The red dots representing his fleet were disappearing one by one, while the blue dots of the human ships continued to fight with deadly precision. His massive invasion force, which had conquered 18 worlds, was being destroyed by 43 primitive metal ships. "Sir?" his communications officer called out over the sounds of alarms and explosions. "The humans are requesting our surrender again." Drac's pride warred with his survival instincts. The Corvan Empire had never surrendered to anyone, but his fleet was being systematically destroyed by tactics he could not understand or counter. Another violent shudder ran through the Devastator as human railgun rounds punched through the hull. The lights flickered and several control panels exploded in showers of sparks. "Warlord," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 60% of the fleet. The humans are closing in on our position." Through the main view screen, Drac could see the human flagship Retribution approaching. The massive dreadnought was scarred by battle damage but still fully operational. Its weapons were trained directly on the Devastator. "Sir," the communications officer pressed, "your orders?" Drac closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with resignation. "Signal the fleet. All ships are to cease fire and await further orders." The order went out across the remaining Corvan ships. One by one, the enemy vessels powered down their weapons and shields. The sudden silence in space was almost deafening after hours of continuous battle. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Ross watched the Corvan fleet surrender with satisfaction. The space around Velros Prime was littered with debris from destroyed enemy ships, but her own fleet remained largely intact. "Admiral," reported Captain Blake, "all enemy vessels have ceased fire. We're receiving surrender signals from across their fleet." "Acknowledge their surrender," Ross ordered. "But keep our weapons trained on them. I want boarding parties ready to secure their command ship." Within hours, human Marines were aboard the Devastator. They moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency, securing key areas and disarming the crew. The Corvan warriors, bred for conquest, found themselves helpless against opponents who fought with a ferocity they had never encountered. Warlord. Drac was brought to the Retribution under heavy guard. The massive alien commander looked diminished as he stood in the human ship's briefing room, facing Admiral Ross across a metal table. Your fleet fought well, Drax said grudgingly. I have never seen such tactics. How did a primitive species develop such weapons? Admiral Ross studied the defeated warlord. We're not primitive, warlord, we're just different. Where other species see warfare as a last resort, humans have made it into an art form. Your ships use kinetic weapons, Draki continued. Metal projectiles like ancient civilizations. Yet they penetrate our most advanced shields. Because your shields are designed to stop energy weapons, Ross explained. A piece of metal moving fast enough will punch through almost anything. It's basic physics. Drax shook his head in confusion. But the rest of the galaxy abandoned such crude methods thousands of years ago. Maybe that's why the rest of the galaxy keeps getting conquered, Ross replied. Down on Velros Prime, the aftermath of the battle was equally dramatic. Ambassador Teal and General Kren stood in the command center, watching as the remaining Corvin ships were escorted out of the system by human vessels. I still cannot believe what I witnessed, Teal said quietly. The humans destroyed the largest invasion fleet in galactic history. General Kren nodded, his expression thoughtful. Their methods were brutal but effective. They fight like no other species I have studied. Captain Blake entered the command center, still wearing his battle-scarred uniform. Ambassador Teal, Admiral Ross requests a meeting with your council. We need to discuss the situation. The meeting took place in the Vellani Council chamber, with Admiral Ross and her senior officers facing the alien leadership. The humans looked tired but victorious, while the Vellani seemed overwhelmed by what they had witnessed. Admiral Ross, Teal began, the Vellani people owe you a debt we can never repay. You saved our entire civilization. We did what was necessary, Ross replied. But now we need to talk about what happens next. The Corvin Empire will not forget this defeat. They may send larger fleets. General Kren leaned forward. Larger than what we just faced? Is that possible? Unfortunately, yes, Ross confirmed. This was just one of their regional fleets. They have others and they'll want revenge. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Vellani had won this battle, but the war might just be beginning. What do you suggest? Asked Counselor Nora. Admiral Ross exchanged glances with her officers before responding. We propose a formal alliance. Earth will establish a permanent base in this system to protect against future attacks. In return, we would like access to your advanced technology. What kind of technology? Teal asked. Your shield generators, gravity manipulators, and fabrication systems, Captain Blake explained. Combined with human weapons and tactics, we could build defenses that no enemy could penetrate. The Vellani Council debated for hours. Some members worried about allying with such a violent species. Others argued that they had no choice if they wanted to remain free. Finally, Teal spoke for the Council. We accept your proposal, Admiral Ross. The Vellani and humans will stand together against any future threats. The formal alliance was signed the next day. Construction began immediately on a joint human-Vellani base in orbit around Velros Prime. The facility would serve as a training center for defensive tactics and a research station for new technologies. Lieutenant Commander Morgan was promoted to colonel and given command of the new fighter wing. Her pilots began training Vellani volunteers in human combat tactics, though the peaceful aliens struggled with the aggressive maneuvers. Commander Torres established a ground training facility, teaching Vellani engineers how to build proper defensive positions. The aliens were quick learners when it came to technology, but the concepts of warfare remained foreign to them. News of the battle spread throughout the galaxy with unprecedented speed. The peaceful Vellani had not only survived a Corvin invasion but had completely destroyed the attacking fleet. The fact that they had been saved by an unknown species from a death world made the story even more remarkable. Other civilizations began requesting information about these humans. Some wanted to hire them as mercenaries. Others worried about the implications of such a militaristic species joining galactic society. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss the human presence. Many members argued that any species capable of such destruction should be contained or monitored. Others pointed out that the humans had only acted in defense of an innocent civilization. Captain Blake, now promoted to admiral, found himself appointed as Earth's first permanent representative to the galaxy. His job was to establish diplomatic relations with other species, while making it clear that humans would not tolerate aggression against their allies. "The galaxy has changed," he reported to Earth Command during one of his regular briefings. "For thousands of years, civilized species have relied on diplomacy and the threat of economic sanctions to maintain peace. But that only works when everyone follows the same rules. And the Corvin Empire doesn't follow those rules," Admiral Ross added from her new position as commander of Earth's expanding galactic fleet. "Exactly. Which is why the galaxy needs us. We're the ones willing to fight when diplomacy fails." 6 months after the battle, Velros Prime had become the center of a new kind of galactic alliance. Species that had lived in fear of the Corvin Empire now had somewhere to turn for protection. The combined human-Vellani base had grown into a small city with ships from a dozen different worlds bringing requests for assistance. Ambassador Teal stood in his office, looking out at the busy spaceport below. Human and Vellani workers moved side by side, building defenses and sharing knowledge. It was not the peaceful existence his people had once known, but it was freedom. Admiral Blake joined him at the window. "Any regrets, Ambassador?" Teal considered the question carefully before responding. "My people were naive to think that peace could exist without the willingness to defend it. You humans understand something we had forgotten." "What's that?" "Sometimes the only way to preserve civilization is to be willing to fight for it."